Hello, everyone, and welcome today to our webinar on the progress and potential of digital impact assessment in Nigeria. Thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to have you with us. Let's get started. So this webinar is being hosted today by the International Association for Impact Assessment, or IAIA. IAIA is the leading global network on best practice for using impact assessment for making better and more informed decisions. My name is Keisha Blaser, and I will be facilitating the webinar today, though you will be mainly hearing from our two presenters and our panelists, which you will be introduced to in a moment. If you hear something today in our webinar that you want to share on social media, please go ahead. You can see there our Twitter, now known as X handle, as well as a hashtag you can use if you want to share anything that you hear today that you think is worth sharing with your colleagues in your network. Before we get started, I have a few pieces of housekeeping to cover, and so I invite you all to check out our website and see the various resources you can find there. First up, you can see that we have webinars on demand, and so all of our previous webinars have been recorded and are available on our website for you to view there. So our webinars cover a variety of topics. You see only three there. First, human rights and impact assessment, which is in Spanish, minimizing risk in the valuation of unregistered land, as well as enhanced environmentally integrated design. So those are just three of our recent webinars, but there are many topics including health, resettlement, biodiversity, and many more. So please do visit our website and check out those webinars. Additionally, I invite you to go to our website to see our upcoming events, including our 2024 annual conference, which will be held in Dublin, Ireland in April. So the early bird registration for this conference is the 24th of January, which is coming up. So I invite you all to check out our website and get registered there to take advantage of that savings. Additionally, we have a webinar tomorrow on defending the mitigation hierarchy in the nature positive era. So if you're interested in that webinar, you can register for that the same way you registered for this webinar. So either check out our website and go to the upcoming webinars tab. Otherwise, if you're having a hard time finding that, please email me. And I will also put a link in the chat toward the end of the webinar that you can go to directly register for that webinar if you'd like to. In addition to webinars at our annual conference, we also have a variety of online training courses. So these courses have been adapted from our in-person conference training courses to be delivered in an online format. These are shorter form courses. Typically, they are scheduled Zoom sessions, and they typically span a few hours each time and are about 2 or 4 sessions. So some upcoming courses that you can register for now are more effective impact assessment, tools for stronger argument and clearer writing. We actually have 3 offerings of that course to accommodate various time zones, so hopefully you can find one that works for you. And next, there's a course on smarter monitoring and auditing for more effective implementation happening in February. Both of those courses are open now and registration is live, so please check out our website and get registered if those are of interest. And next up, in addition to our online training courses, we also offer a Foundations of Impact Assessment professional development program, which is a bit longer. It's a 12-week self-paced course that includes case studies, videos, and readings. And the really unique thing about this program is you're paired one-on-one with a mentor as you work through the course. You get to meet with them in Zoom sessions, talk through what you're learning, get feedback from them, and really just have them as an expert to help guide you as you're learning. So registration is closed for our current session that starts on Monday, but the program will run again in June and run through August, and registration should open in early April, so please do look out for that. And of course, if you check out our resources tab on our website, you'll see a variety of free and downloadable publications. So whether you want something short and sweet, we have fast tips for you if that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, we also have our best practice principles, which are a bit more involved if you're looking for something more in depth. So for all of those and more, please check out our website and take a look. Next up, just some last pieces of housekeeping, and then I will introduce today's presenters. So first up, yes, we are recording today's webinar, and since you are registered for the webinar, it will be emailed to you directly within a day or two of the live session, and it will be available on our website as well on demand. You can also access and download the slides, which will also be sent to you with the recording, but they are available now if you go to the Handouts tab on GoToWebinar control panel. There will be time for Q&A at the end. We'll have about 15 minutes, but I invite you during the webinar, if you hear something that sparks a question, go ahead and put it in the questions tab at any time during the webinar. Don't feel like you have to wait until the end in case you might forget your question. So feel free to type it in there, and I'll be monitoring that during the webinar, and we will make sure we get time for your questions at the end. So now I would like to introduce today's presenters. First, Josh Fothergill. Josh is the lead author of the State of Digital IA Practice, which was launched in late 2021. He has regularly led in-depth reviews into IA systems, including the UK's presentation or proportionate EIA strategy in 2017, global EIA accreditation systems in 2019, and linking the circular economy and IA in 2021. Josh founded Fothergill Training and Consulting to provide independent IA expertise and capacity building services. He previously spent a decade at the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, co-authoring much of the UK's IA guidance over that period and creating the award-winning EIA Quality Marks Scheme. Next, Edia Nadarake. Edia is the founder and managing director of Willand UK in Nigeria. He has a background in civil engineering, which has diversified into environmental management and sustainability. He started his environmental career on strategic environmental assessment with Fareham Borough Council UK. He has worked on projects of national significance for clients in Nigeria, Qatar, and United Kingdom. His is a chartered environmentalist from the UK's The Society of Environment, based on his pragmatic problem-solving approach, which adds value across the program lifecycle of projects from strategy development through to implementation and legacy. So with that, Josh and Etia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keisha, for that. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Etia, if you just give me a nod if that's the case. Yep, very good. Okay, fantastic. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for that introduction, Keisha. That was very good, and good to hear about all those activities, particularly IAIA-24. I think both myself and Etia plan to be there. So this is the 6th webinar in the Digital Impact Assessment Practice series, and usually I facilitate these webinars, but today I'm actually one of the presenters because I've been involved in the reports that we are launching today, which is all about enabling digital EIA within Nigeria. So the structure of what we're going to talk about today is going to be, I'll do a little bit of digital impact assessment context, which is just part of this ongoing series, and highlight where it comes from. We'll then move to Etia, who'll talk about the basis and approach to the research. I'll come back in and talk about the report's key findings, and then Etia will come back in and take us through some case examples and progress of digital EIA within Nigeria. We've got a number of panelists who are then going to join us and give some just kind of 3 to 5 minute perspectives that took part in the research. And then, as Keisha mentioned, we'll move to the Q&A. So without further ado, I'm Josh Fothergill, and let's put some context around digital impact assessment and what we mean by that. Well, it all, I guess, really kicked off back in 2015 with the IAIA conference in Florence, which was very much focused on digital, and there was a large number of papers there. And I think that generated quite a lot of impact assessment professionals' interest in the area, and there were a number of papers then ongoing in conferences as they went forward. And I was very interested and thought it would be useful to actually look at what's the state of practice. So through 2021, I undertook this research study that was supported by the IAIA, and that led to the publication of that, I guess, what has now become quite a central report to digital impact assessment, which is about the state of digital impact assessment and a global review of the uptake of digital technologies and approaches within impact assessment practice. And then since then, there's been a whole series of webinars, and you can access the recordings that are on the IAIA website, but you can access them all through that link at the top of the page there. So we've got more focus on digital impact assessment workspaces, what's going on in Australia, the IFC's Melina artificial intelligence that you'll hear a little bit more about at the back end of today in Etia's update, and a few other activities as well. But what do we mean by digital impact assessment? Well, we're not talking about applying impact assessment tools to digital technologies. There is an IAIA section that looks into that and is interested in that, but that's not what we're focusing on here. What we're focusing more about is the uptake and application of digital technologies and approaches within the delivery of impact assessment, be that environmental impact assessment or ESIA or strategic environmental assessment, etc. Unfortunately, there's no real definition as to what digital impact assessment is, or there certainly wasn't before the 2021 reports, certainly not within laws or in the financial institution standards. There is some reference to digital provision of documents, online websites to host information and those kind of things, but no really overarching definition. And in undertaking the research and engaging a lot on digital impact assessment, it's become very clear that there's very different views depending on the experiences and perspectives of those you're speaking about and the interaction they've had with practice. So as I mentioned, the IAIA Innovation Grants helped fund the project and led to the launch of that report. And within that report, we defined a definition for digital impact assessment, the use of advances in digital technologies and their application in the pursuit of enabling more effective impact assessment practice. So this isn't just using digital technology for digital technology's sake, it is about trying to apply it to improve the way our tool that we focus on as impact assessment professionals actually delivers and improves issues for the environment, for communities, for health, but also for the consenting of developments and those involved in that process so that they can use their time effectively. So the report itself identified a breakdown of kind of digital impact assessment, and there was, I suppose, two kind of key areas from that. One was approaches that use existing technology to enable impact assessment to move forward, so large online systems, the bringing in of artificial intelligence, the use of drones and data capture devices, the use of virtual meetings. The fact that we're having a webinar today is one of those online capacity building so that we can discuss impact assessment without actually having to physically gather together. And then there's a separate area that we kind of defined, which was the transformation of aspects of the impact assessment process by integrating digital approaches within them more fully. So digital screening tools that exists. I think there's one in South Africa. Certainly USAID has the NEAT tool, which is also applied and helps to kind of screen environmental issues in terms of humanitarian aid, and then various other aspects there as well. The report identified that this transformation isn't just a thing that's happening in Africa or in Europe or in Australia, but actually there's activity and progress being made all over the world by different practitioners. And obviously you can see quite a lot of examples on the screen there. I'm not going to talk to many of those today, but the reason that we are kind of focusing on Nigeria today was as part of the research and part of the discussion. The IAIA was very kind to share my survey, and it went kind of around the globe. We got lots of different responses, and there was a strong response from Africa, in particular from Nigerian practitioners. That led to various conversations, which eventually led to myself and Etia undertaking this research project. And then the other thing, or another thing that the report highlighted and that we need to think about when we're thinking about the application of digital technologies in impact assessment is we need to manage the change that is coming as a result of this. So we need to think about data. How accessible is it? How much can we trust it versus perhaps more traditional sources that aren't digitized? And how do we integrate it? Are there systems that can be linked together, or are these quite separate systems? So even if they are digital, maybe they're not online, you've got to go and access them. How do we bring all that together? When we're thinking about the changes required, we need to think about the quality and the costs. Are we going to get more effective practice through applying digital technology? Is that going to save us time? But also, are there risks? Might we risk losing various skilled inputs into the process? And in relation to that, are there risks of not having the right skills in order to get the best out of the digital technology? There are always issues around engagement when we use different ways of communicating with people in terms of equity, in terms of inclusion, and making sure that we don't generate a digital divide. So those are things that we need to increasingly think about as we apply digital technology into impact assessment. And then finally, we need to think about safety, privacy, and security of the data that we're making available, but also how do we share that data so that it can be used by others and be more effective. So hopefully that gives you a flavour and a kind of feeling of what impact assessment is and the digital approaches to it. We're now going to move on to our focus on Nigeria, and I will hand over to Etienne Ndrake, who is Managing Director of Willand Associates. Over to you, Etienne.
Thank you, Josh. Can I check? Can you hear me?
Yep, very good.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, IAIA, for this opportunity. So we will just give you a bit of an overview of how we came to this point today. That's just a picture of the city gate. So for anybody who has visited Nigeria, you'll definitely see this on your way to and from the airport. Next slide, please, Josh. Okay, so that's a cover of the report and what it looks like, and you can get a free download of the copy of the report from the web link provided. And just to provide a bit of context, this report would not have been possible without the engagement with the Federal Ministry of Environment, the Environmental Assessment Department particularly, and the National Oil Spill Detection and Regulatory Agency. So these two government departments have been key in providing us an insight into environmental impact assessment in Nigeria. We also got support from the UK Department for International Trade. And so just for clarity, this was not funded fully by the UK government. It was part funded by Willand. So it was a 50-50 proposition. So we made a 50% contribution towards the success of this report. Next slide, please. This report will not have been successful also without inputs and of other stakeholders. Our thinking was to bring in the academia into the conversation, bring other organizations with experience in this field also. So we collaborated with the University of Uyo in Nigeria, and particularly it's the International Center for Energy and Environmental Sustainability. We also partnered with IAIA. So IAIA gave us the very first platform to bring this conversation forward. And if some of you can remember, last year we had a webinar, so the year before last actually. So we had a webinar which sort of introduced this concept. And so this, where we are today, is a follow-on from that. So thank you to IAIA for the support. The Netherlands Commission for Environmental Assessment was also key in providing us the support and also thinking into how we carry the research forward. Thank you. So let's go back to the very basics. So back in 2020, we engaged the University of Uyo to undertake a concept feasibility study for one of the problems that we know we have in the environmental field, and it has to do with waste management. For us as a business, Willand, so we are aware of this problem, but to get somebody else to validate your idea is the professional thing to do. So we went to the university, and this also links into our thinking about collaboration with the academic sector. They have a key role to play. And that was the first problem. The first problem was we could not get hold of data. It's not that this data is not available. The data is there, I can tell you for sure. The data is there on the regulatory side. The data is also there on the various respondents that we approached. But we found ourselves in this situation where A was saying go to B, B was saying go to A. So I have to give credit to university, we overcame that problem. And as an output of that concept study, the recommendation was that we proceed with looking at ways to establish a waste facility. Fast forward to 2021, there was a conference which I attended, and it was focused on digital transformation and environmental impact assessment. So during that conference, there were different ideas. So this is where the idea came. So I cast my mind back to say, look, what happened during the 2020 time when we had concept study? And at the same time, I got talking to Josh, and we organized the webinar with IAIMA giving us the platform. So merging all those together, we consolidated our idea and thinking of how to take things forward. In 2022, we then got this grant, which is a matching grant, like I said. And then the next problem we had was when we took on the recommendation that the university made for us, which was, please go ahead and establish a waste facility. We have a problem, and this is what you need to do. So we engaged with Earth Pulse, is a consultancy, and Dr. Aboje will hopefully he's on the call. We engaged with him to start the process of the environmental impact assessment for our waste facility project. Again, we encountered another problem. So this problem was more of me as an environmental practitioner wanting to know more about the location of our proposed project. So whilst the consultant has all this information, the thinking was, as a professional, I should see information for myself and use those to sort of inform the design thinking, etc. So the problem we had was that our facility or proposed facility is literally sharing a fence with an operational facility, which is in the oil and gas sector. Now, we know that sector is heavily regulated, despite what anybody might think, but we could not get hold of baseline data. So baseline data, if you need to get baseline data, you need to get on the plane and go somewhere to go look at the archives of the regulator to shift through several, archives of information. Now, that got me thinking, surely there has to be a way forward. So we then thought we'll discuss with the federal ministry, and the thinking was to say, yes, we are progressing with the environmental impact assessment for our project. We will give you what you require, the traditional approach. But in taking that traditional approach, we want to integrate various digital technology ideas, etc., in the process. And we're very grateful for the opportunity and the collaboration. That then leads us nicely into a discussion with Josh. So having secured funding, now we have a second bottleneck of idea problems with our project. Then how do we then look at solving this problem for Nigeria? Next slide, please, Josh. So what did we do? We had to get approval from various senior officials. So we wrote to the Minister of Environment and to the Director General of the Oil Spill Regulatory Agency, and they gave us the blessings and approval. We then started engaging with research partners, so the university, the federal ministry, different persons within those environmental organizations, and then we then fine-tuned the scope of our study. So between Josh and myself, we agreed, refined, and then proceeded with the study. The study was completed in 2023, and for us, we are more than happy, and we, in our thinking, and I believe anybody who has read the report later on will agree that the report is such that it provides Nigeria EIA practice as a blueprint, as a framework for starting real serious conversations. And we are definitely willing, and Josh, we're willing and ready to collaborate with anybody concerning this. Okay, next one, please, Josh. And that's it. Thank you very much.
I think that hands back over to me, doesn't it, Etia? So thank you very much for that. There was a question that came in while you were speaking just about the web link. So if you do get a chance to post that, the direct link, that'd be really helpful in the chat. But I've got the Fothergill TC one that people can access it too. Okay. So you'll all be wanting to hear undoubtedly about the actual report itself. Obviously, you've seen the context. It's developed over a number of years. It's not something that we've taken lightly in terms of our activity and interest, and it has linked in to some specific EIA activity within Nigeria as well. So you can see the front copy of the report there, and hopefully you'll be able to access that. The study is launching today, and what the report covers is it talks about the research, it talks about digitization in and around Nigerian EIA, and within the front end of that there's some context of how the EIA process works, but of course don't take that as your definitive guide. You need to refer to the laws and guidance in relation to that, and then it goes on to talk about who we engaged with and the findings that came out of that, and I'll give you a brief kind of coverage of all of that in this presentation now. So I should say there was only a certain amount of presentation, only a certain amount of engagement that we could undertake because of the scale of the study. So as Etia says, there's certainly, this provides a stepping off point for even more investigation. So what we looked at, and one of the things we thought as we had to choose a focus for activity, was that we should really make sure we engage with government in relation to this as to what is going on in terms of digitization, and then also reach out beyond that as far as we could within the budget and time we had available. So the Federal Ministry of Environment, the Office of Environmental Assessment Department, is obviously the kind of key government body in relation to this. So we had some interviews and discussions with them. They've certainly got a significant digital archive of EIA documents that already exists, so that's a really good point to be at. And there has certainly been past investment in ICT kind of equipment and upgrades within the Federal Ministry. I believe some of that was a World Bank supported activity. So a lot of the old physical copy reports, hard copy reports scanned in, as well as digital documents available now in the archive. We've been moving forward with, the Ministry has been moving forward with an online registration of a developer's EIA process, the EIA portal phase 1. So this takes some of the components, some of the earlier stage components of the EIA process within Nigeria and the formal submission of documents, and begins to create a digital registration process. And the aim is to build out from that and have a portal and a digital interaction for those documents. The Ministry is looking and investing in GIS, and what it's doing there is building upon the skills and interests of existing EIA officers. And as we'll come to one of the challenges perhaps for the Federal Ministry, the kind of skills definition of what someone who works at the Office for Environmental Assessment is very much focused on environmental assessment, and therefore the ability to bring in from outside pure digital skills is a challenge for the Federal Ministry. There is much planning going on for further portal developments, particularly around that section 57.1 of the EIA laws, of having a digital archive, of management of the live steps throughout the EIA process. So that is in train, but it takes time and is under development. We also had conversations and meetings with the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, NOSTRA, and they have much more integration, I guess, of kind of digital approaches within their staff. And there's far more application of digital data and GIS, but then I guess to an extent that isn't overly surprising. Apologies, I have a daft cough at the moment. That isn't overly surprising because the NOSTRA is obviously focused on identifying where are these spills, what are the issues, and having the ability for staff to go out, take photographs, upload these to the cloud and have those come onto their systems is obviously something that fits in with that organisation. So we also engaged with some developers and consultants in relation to the digital EIA process, partly through survey, partly through some focused interviews with people we'd been able to identify and get hold of. And what we identified from I suppose that side of practice, so we've looked at the government side, from the developers and consultant side of things, there is a considerable increase over the last decade of the adoption of digital technology to drive efficiency and improve quality within the process. So certainly the use of drones to improve access to areas, to improve health and safety issues in terms of accessing areas for consultants, in order to be able to go out and see a larger area in a shorter space of time, or access areas that would otherwise prove challenging and very time consuming to get to. But inevitably, there are, of course, challenges with the use of drones. And then we come back to what I was mentioning in the overarching context presentation about kind of safety, security, and kind of getting engagement from local communities so that they're aware of what's going on. There's considerable use of GIS, but that's where the digital data sets already exist or where the project can access them. And obviously ETIA has highlighted some of the challenges there about sometimes accessing that data. And then, of course, what we have seen is a move away, although we still, as in many countries, still have a requirement for paper copy reports. That digital submission of documents via the online portal is a real tangible step, and we can see the potential of how that could move considerably forward. But in the discussions with developers and consultants, there was definitely a feeling of unmet potential, limitations on the availability of digital environmental data, or the accessibility, perhaps I should say, and also perhaps a lack of coordination across those data holders to make it more accessible in a kind of unified manner. There is some uptake of the use of satellite-derived data that's beginning to gain a bit more pace, and clearly there's more opportunities there. But certainly from what we found, perhaps some of the university research is ahead of practice in terms of actual practical application of what's available through satellite-derived data. And then, of course, there's clearly appetite, and we saw a lot of appetite for greater expansion of digital EIA approaches within Nigeria, and ETIA will give you a case study a little later on. But as is the case all over the world, there are barriers that exist to, I suppose, the rapid and broad scale uptake of digital EIA. And there's a section on each of these within the report, so you can peruse those at your leisure later on. And I believe the report link has now been shared with the audience. There's perhaps, I suppose, some barrier in terms of the commitment to digitization of EIA. Is there a clear, there's a clear desire to move this area forward, but we're seeing incremental steps. And those incremental steps perhaps not keeping up with the ambition or the progress that is rapidly being made with digital technology. So I suppose some question, is there still a full commitment to really taking this digital technology forward, or is it just a fad? And I'd definitely say it's going to happen, but it is taking its time. There's then, of course, issues around data in terms of lack of digital environment and community data. Considerable limitations exist on what data is gathered digitally, what data is stored digitally, and what is available digitally. So it might be gathered by hand and then need time to be transferred. It then may be digital, but only in one particular office, or available perhaps in one organization, but not available to other government organizations, and certainly not perhaps accessible on the kind of public web. There are, as I've mentioned already, some capacity challenges, skills and systems challenges in terms of having the right ICT skills, but also in terms of being able to bring in and integrate those digital skills within the environmental assessment process. You don't want pure digital professionals because they need to appreciate and understand what the environmental assessment is trying to do at each stage, but equally, you do need those skills to be able to effectively bring in and use GIS systems, etc. Inevitably, as we have different government bodies doing different activities, different statutory consultees, different bodies holding data, the availability of time to really concentrate on this and coordinate this digital data and these systems together is a challenge, particularly when each individual government body and system has its own function and needs to keep functioning in that manner. So the ability to kind of not just move things forwards in a more rapid manner, but integrate them is certainly a challenge that needs to be thought about. There are perhaps some learnings from some previous investments, so some discussions with some of the government departments highlighting that there had been some progress, there had been some use of digital data and technology, but sometimes there were challenges of relying on third parties to provide digital services, but then being able to maintain the budget to then keep that third party and that third party system operating and updated, is a challenge as well. And that's certainly an issue that I know exists for government departments around the world in relation to do you build it in-house or do you take someone else's technology? But if you take someone else's technology, then, how do you then kind of maintain that? And I guess a key message that we found across the piece was this moving from adopting digital technology to really moving to more digitized processes, procedures, and systems. So both within government and practice, we can see clear progress being made, but maybe it's specific use of individual technologies where you're going to use drones more for baseline gathering and those type of activities. But the ambition across the Nigerian EIA profession seems to be to see much more significant change. And I think that aligns with what we see when we get together as an IAIA conference and discuss digital impact assessments. Overarching all of this, and probably the biggest challenge, is funding. There are potential savings, there are potential efficiencies to be made here, but you have to have the systems and you have to have the ability to deliver these. And, to get that investment, get that technology implemented and those funding systems set in place isn't always something that can be found within national budgets or have the case made when there are so many other priorities as well. Therefore, funding definitely is a challenge and will probably remain a challenge moving forward, and certainly needs to be an area that is thought about. It is worth noting, we try to characterize what is the ambition, the appetite for digital EIA within Nigeria, and we came up with these 5 points. Nigerian EIA practice is recognized as a leader in the adoption and deployment of digital EIA approaches, both locally and internationally, and is kind of sharing its activities more widely. Advancing digital EIA approaches is achieved through collaborative partnerships with the joint aim of enhancing environmental performance and the delivery of sustainable development. It's very clear that it can't just be individual organizations, individual activities that are going to make a systemic change. People need to come together. The government understanding of digital approaches and the use of technology in EIA is ahead of that commonly held by proponents and their consultants at the moment. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case across kind of government teams, so that's an area that perhaps needs some focus to enhance skills. The Federal Ministry has a strategy of how it's going to deliver its EIA portal, and beyond that, how it's going to build more digital approaches into the EIA process, and how it's going to accept EIA digital approaches from others moving forward as well. And then the final one, future EIA-related capacity building activities take account of how digital systems can play a role in supporting effective and efficient EIA. So as we see EIA capacity building and training moving forward in Nigeria, beginning to bring more elements of digital approaches into that so that we can build the learning and move forward. The report moves on from this kind of, I suppose, ambition statement, as you might call it, into next steps and activities and what might be achievable. And we talk about progressing digital impact assessment, the fact that it requires collaboration. And the report identifies multiple potential partners that could work with the Federal Ministry in order to advance digital EIA approaches from the kind of, I suppose, procedural process and legislative process and into the system within Nigeria. And we can see a number highlighted there, the IFC, the World Bank, the African Development Bank in terms of the financial institutions, universities, as Etienne mentioned, the role that they'd already played, but development agencies, tech firms, etc. And we identify a number of areas where there could be opportunities. And in fact, the IFC Molina beta testing is something that Etienne will talk to you more about in a minute. So where did we come to? Where did we conclude? Well, the study can't fix everything. We were looking at what was going on, what was the potential, what needs to happen next. And what we really identified is that it would be incredibly useful for the Federal Ministry to have a kind of digital EIA strategy. But it's going to need some support in bringing that together. And we felt there were 3 aims to that. EIA related data, reviewing what is available digitally, what isn't, where it's held, how it's shared, which are the organizations involved. The digitization of the EIA process, the continuation of the EIA portal that the Federal Ministry is already doing, and then that engagement and collaboration with practice, with academics in terms of what are their priorities. So that's where we came to. That was kind of the conclusion in terms of next steps. I'm now going to hand back over to Etia to talk about some specific case examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So we will be just looking at an example or examples, and this has to do with the project we mentioned earlier on and where we've gone with in terms of progress with digitization. So just for context, the flowchart there, for anybody who's not familiar with IAIA process, there is a process in Nigeria, and that process is pretty much outlined, and as an IAIA proponent or IAIA consultant, you should be aware of these processes. And so it does involve the elements for particular sections. So the proponent has a role to play, your consultant has a role to play, the federal ministry has a role to play, and others. So you see, if you follow the dotted line down, you see where it says a technical committee. So you also have the opportunity where you do have experts from different fields come together to have a look and make an assessment or input, contribution, etc. in the IAIA process in Nigeria. And if you're able to go through all those rigor and etc., then you should be having an IAIA certificate. And we are currently for our project, we are at the stage now where we're pretty much one step away from getting that paper that just says a certificate. But in principle, our regulators are happy with the work we've done. So thank you. And so for context, that's just a map of Nigeria. And just to provide a little bit of context of the location for the proposed project, it's on the coast of Nigeria, and it's just it's literally one of the Niger Delta states. For those who know Nigeria or heard of Niger Delta, so it's in the Niger Delta area. It's in the south. And just to give you a little bit of context, so Abuja is the capital. So to give you a little bit of context, if you wanted to get data, you would have to get on either a bus or get a plane, and except you have a consultant who knows what he's doing, who can get information for you. So it's not like this information is not available. I'd just like to reiterate, it is there, but it's just the consolidation. It's in little silos. Next slide, please. So we wanted to use the same context. So we were aware of the work that Josh had done. And so for us, when we looked at the IAIA for our project, we identified areas where there is an ambition, where we think we could approach things. So all of those things have happened at different times and scales. So the artificial intelligence, for example, so whilst it was talked about it being available, at the time it was not. But you would see what it looks like as of today. So we can clearly say, yes, we have integrated it, and there are things that we have to take into consideration as well. So the use of digital devices, so drones, yes, we did look at that. For the future, for once we're happy with our project, etc., and funding and all this kind of things that go with all these projects. So we will make our IAIA, available, and we want to look at a web-based reporting system or web-based hosting system where people can look at and interact with it. And so the other thing we did was a platform that allows us to interact with our consultants. So Dr. Boja is on the call. So this is something we trialed. Okay, how effective it was, the outcome is a different story, but we did try it. And we know that all those 4 elements that we've looked into were considered, and they were definitely integrated in the thinking of our project going forward. Next slide, please, Josh. So using that same theme, we then had to break down the areas of interest for us. So remember what I said earlier on, that our traditional approach for IAIA with the federal ministry was steam ahead. And so this was just looking at sections where we could integrate digitization. So for us, the 3 layers we looked at was data collection. We looked at how we report the data and how we present the data. And the third one was the data analysis. So for us, we certainly use drones for collation of information. This is baseline information, and we'll show pictures in a bit just to provide a bit of context. We're able to attach the drones for air quality sampling, and in the context of the location, you could see why it was important to have the ability to take air samples at different heights. When I say not just human level height, so you could go go up in the sky for example. We also looked at creating a geospatial database, which we did. And that was really just a demo. So we used Mango Map. We created this map of our site. We inputted all of the parameters that were taken on site, so the in situ samples that were collected. Another ambition we had was to look at inputting baseline data that we eventually got hold of, so the regulators could have used the map on the phones or the tablets to literally see which one is baseline data historic from other data sources and data that was collected as part of our own project by our consultants. And then what we did was share that map, and that map was used. It was available and live at the time for the regulators to use, and also for the technical panelists to understand. And again, what that shows is just the willingness and the openness to explore different solutions. And we can definitely say that it added value. And then we had the shared drive, which we've talked about, where we're able to host information and share. So myself and our consultant, our lead consultant, can review reports, simultaneously. Data analysis was the other one. Like I said, at the time, it was looking at it, but now we are in a position where, at the time, it was not available, but it is available as we speak now. So we thought we'll give a little bit of context to show data collection, reporting, presentation of data, and then analysis of data. Next slide, please. So these are static pictures. So our drone survey obviously is like a video you could play it. So I'll start from the top left hand as I see it on my screen. So just to give people an idea of the clarity that you could take. So for anybody within the consultant team who knows their stuff, going very close, they could identify different species. They can have a good understanding of the environment. They could see things from a different perspective. If I move to the top right-hand photograph, so again, that shows from a social point of view. So because I'm from there, that's my community, by the way. Our house, my family house is just a little bit to the corner of that, bottom right-hand corner of that. But with the consultant being on site, with the community representatives, they could see and have a good understanding of context of the project and what's around. So in terms of sensitivity, you could see there's a church in the background. There's a school. So the school is the sort of maroon colored building to the left of the church. And further, you could see that's the Atlantic Ocean. So for a consultant who's not really familiar with this place, with that image, it gives you good context and overview of what you're dealing with in terms of the sensitivity and the potential impact and who might be impacted upon. The bottom left-hand corner is a photograph that provides another context. So it shows the context of the existing facilities that I talked about. So the existing oil facilities, and to the bigger one is other bigger. So you have a context of huge. So it's one of the second largest terminal, and you have a smaller one. Then you also have our own project. You can see there's a bus there. There's a bus, a little white dot, image there. So for those who have concerns and say, well, as a regulator or as a practitioner, is digitization going to take away, my ability to go to field? The answer definitely is no. There are some communities that if you rock up to the IAIA, if you don't show up with a regulator, you might as well just forget it. It's not going to happen. And so for us, so we had the regulators there, so they were part of the site visits. So they were on site, but a regulator doesn't have to go in and swim in the swamp, So this is where digitization helps. And one of the even advanced way we're looking at is how that information could be relayed. So whilst Dr. Andrews is doing this, I could stay here in the UK and still have access to it. So that's just to give you an idea of the possibilities and things that could be thought about. And finally, the bottom right-hand corner, that's to give you an idea of, you could see what features, you could see that's brackish water, you could see, you could go very low, a little bit of agricultural land just to the north of that photograph. We thought we used to give you a little bit of context of how drones are useful. Next slide, please. So in terms of artificial intelligence, so let's fast forward to where we are now. So as of December, we, as part of this research project, so this is again where we are seeing the benefit of this research that is already having an impact. So Josh introduced us to the IFC. We then facilitated the discussion between the IFC and the Federal Ministry of Environment, and there was an agreement that was signed that allows both parties to exchange information freely. So the focus of that collaboration, so there is a project ongoing as we speak between the IFC and the Federal Ministry of Environment to test their own artificial intelligence software. Now, the basis of that is that it would allow the Federal Ministry to analyze historic IAIA reports. And then from that, we can take insights, and those insights could then form the basis. So for example, a proponent could say, if you want to do a rail project, you want to do a marine project, these are the insights that the analysis provided. And then the next thing we can then do is to identify, well, how can we make the process even quicker? So this is where artificial intelligence comes to play. And we've been informed that the public version will be available by the 31st of this month. So 31st of this month, have a look at IFC website. You should be able to have access to the public version of the software. Now, the project we're doing with Nigerian Ministry of Environment is separate. It's completely separate because it's more of a focused trialing of the software from a regulatory point of view. And one of the lessons I like to also share, which is an output of this research, is that the sharing of information was one thing that was not really clear, but by having this conversation between both parties, it is a clear pathway now to ensure that the sensitive information is secure and there's an exchange of information clearly. That's just a photograph that showed, participants. So what we then did was to facilitate that workshop, and it was very useful. It was a hybrid. We had, World Bank officials from New York joining, and we had Federal Ministry colleagues also within Nigeria joining virtually. Next slide, please, Josh. So just to give us an insight into what Melina would look like. This is for our own project. Then this is not the final project. This is the draft report that was sent through and analyzed with Melina. So we also need to understand what this really means. So please do not, if you ask me questions, I may not be able to give you an answer. But what I can say is this: as a practitioner, I'm under pressure. I'm a regulator under pressure, or you need to deliver this to me. The first thing I can see now is that Melina is able to identify to me what are the really high risk areas. And so if there's an area which I want to see, what's the benefit of this project. So this is an output that just shows. So the sentiment analysis tells you that, okay, these are different elements you should be looking at. These are elements that work. This is where you should be focusing on. You could challenge it. We have asked the question, does this mean that people could deliberately not put certain words just to trick the software? But the other answer is, again, this is where human intervention comes in. Because as a professional, even though you're using a software, here in the UK, we have this big saga ongoing now where people have got in trouble because, certain organizations relied on software and refusing to allow human intervention to come into play. So what we're saying is that definitely technology has a role to play. But as professionals, we have a role to play also by interrogating the information we see. So, for example, a client or a consultant gives this to me. The first thing I do is to say, okay, what are those high-risk items? Why do you have more positive? And what are those positive? What do they mean? So drilling down into those. But this gives you an instant overview of your report, which could go into volumes. Next slide, please. Again, that's just another example. So the top left-hand, it was the different chapters of our IAIA report. The word count, again, what that does is just analyze and tells you different words. So, waste is the key one. So it's really, you can focus on waste and say, okay, look, I just need to really understand the context of that, the impact of water, etc. And the bottom bottom one is an extract of what the analysis looks like. So when you're doing the analysis, that's what it would look like, and you could then use that information. The AI data software does its magic and gives you all the previous slides that we showed earlier. Analysis. Next slide, please, Josh. So next things for us. We will definitely continue the collaboration with the IFC and the Federal Ministry. We've seen there's already benefits and positive things coming out. We will present the findings of this report in Dublin, IAIA 2024. So please, if you are in Dublin in April, we would love to have conversation with you and to collaborate on taking things forward. The report will be hosted in various platforms on our website, on Josh's website, and IAIA website. And then as a business, Fothergill and William, we are open to collaboration, we're open to business, we're open to talk to people on how we can improve EIA in Nigeria. And with that, I believe that's over to Josh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Etio, for that and running to time as well, which is fantastic. So, yeah, that's really what we wanted to talk about and present. If you're not familiar with the IFC's, the International Finance Corporation's Melina Artificial Intelligence, there is a webinar that we did with them earlier on in this series, and you can access that through the IAIA website or that link that I shared earlier. What we wanted to do now, though, was, you've heard a lot from us, and you hopefully have got some familiarity with the research report. But what we wanted to do was just give an opportunity for a few of the people who had been key to the research that we'd actually undertaken. We wanted to give that opportunity for them to just provide some brief kind of focus perspectives, so kind of 3 to 5 minutes each of what they found from the research study or their thoughts around digital impact assessment in Nigeria. So we'll run through each of our participants if they were all on at the start, so hopefully we'll still have them. So I'd first like to hand the floor over to Dr. Abbas Suleiman, Director of the Environmental Assessment Department at the Federal Ministry of Environment. So kind of 3 to 5 minute perspective from yourself, Dr. Abbas, if you're there.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I'm here and I'm listening attentively to the discussions thus far. Well, thanks to IAIA for this webinar, and we will also express our gratitude to Dr. Etia, your good self, Josh, for this study that you have, executed, and the report that came out of it. I like to say that as a department, we have been very open from day one as to how we can improve our digital EIA work. That is not to say that we really didn't have anything going. From the study, you can also see that quite a lot, has been achieved in terms of digital EIA in Nigeria. What I will want to say is, my mic is on. Can you hear me? They just.
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, fine. So what I would like to say is that we are after the, I think basically after the IAIA conference in Florence, Italy, on digitizing EIAs. Even before that time, a lot has been done in terms of applying digital solutions to EIAs in Nigeria. But we kind of took it to a greater level after that IAIA conference. Yes, the World Bank supported initially, but funding stopped in 2008. And all that we have been doing since is from government sources and resources that we can also pull in-house as a department. One thing again we ought to also know is that when we talk about EIA generally, EIA in Nigeria doesn't, we can't say it begins with the department, but we're just we superintend over it. A lot of information is carried out from the proponent side and then the analysts. And virtually all the EIA reports that we get at one place or the other will have digital input. There's hardly any EIA report that you're not going to have at the best maybe a Google map or even a digital map. We're taking it far back to even the topographical maps that you have. And when these reports, when you start a process, when it's registered, yes, we don't have an online registration system as yet, but you can get the registration forms on our website all over the world. That is one step. And why we don't have that online registration system is we cannot afford to be much faster than the entire government bureaucratic structure in Nigeria. There are agencies that have a higher degree of autonomy with a limited scope of work. Let me also stress that in what they do, like the case study of Nostra. But the Department of Environmental Impact Assessment is sitting right inside the bureaucracy of the ministry structure, that you have a federal minister at the helms of affairs, and things are done at that level in a service, that I'm using the terminology they use, in a service-wide way. So as a department, in as much as we're eager to move very fast, you cannot be faster than your superintending authorities. So yeah, when proponents do register, when they download the forms online and send it to us in paper copy, officers that go into the field have a digital platform where they immediately report what they see to myself in headquarters and a few other supervisors based on the cell phone. And as they are reporting, the coordinates are being sent. So that is one great step. And this matter had once helped us in resolving a conflict between two companies as to where a particular project had to be located. So this is one great form of digitization. We have apps that we have developed to immediately also report data. And then my officers are now even testing an app that is similar to Malena, where we may not need to go into that here. And then I also want to say that we have drones. This is let me show you close to the camera. It can be seen. We have 2 drones in the department. It would have been 3. The customs service, seized one, claiming whatever. That would have been our biggest drone. So, and these are efforts that we have built within the department just to supervise EIA reports that we get. Most of the reports are coming from the private sector. You can imagine companies like Shell, ExxonMobil. Their reports are heavy on the digital side. So whose responsibility it is to okay those reports. We are trying to make sure that we are not too far behind, as it were, in trying to show that we are on top of the game. So as a department, we're not doing too badly. And it's a department that we are very open to suggestions, to ideas, and that's also why if you can check your participation, a key number of my staff have enlisted for this webinar. All the previous webinars that IAIA and Dr. Itia we have always participated, and we are very eager to take this digitization to the next level. And from your study, you could see that we have a lot in terms of the repository of data and what have you. But by the nature of government bureaucracy, there are so many things that we cannot just throw out there and say we are this, we are that, because we know that we can do much more. We have GIS licenses, officers that are trained in
Thank you,
GIS.
Dr. Abbas.
We don't write. Yeah, we don't write here as a department. Ours is just to make sure that what comes out is acceptable to the general public and institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic and very useful, and some very useful updates in that. So thank you very much, Dr. Abbas. We're now going to move on to, or hopefully move on to Mrs. Margaret Adesida, who is Director of GIS and ICT Department at NOSDRA, which is the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. Mrs. Margaret, are you there? You able to join us? Okay, right, no problem. Okay, well, we will move on. I'm not sure if she's been able to join us, so we'll move on to Dr. Andrews, who is the EIA consultant that Etienne mentioned a number of times. So, Dr. Andrews, your perspectives.
Thank you, Josh. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to give an overall perspective of what the actual carrying out of the digital EIA process in Nigeria, the pilot one, the first one, what it actually looks like. First and foremost, I'd like to state that the digital EIA process in Nigeria, it's not a process that is looking at taking the place of the traditional EIA system we've been used in Nigeria. What we did is more like a hybrid or a marriage of the two, where we take advantages of what you can get from the digital process and also what we've been doing pre the digital process. So I'd like us to understand that in the first place. And also that the digital process is an enhancement. It's not a process that is going to take out what we've been doing, because there are great advantages from that process too. So there are traditional processes that were still done for our integrated waste management project, which was done at southern parts of Nigeria. Every EIA in Nigeria, EIA practitioner in Nigeria knows, and like the Director of Environment has just told us a while ago, it's a regulatory process. So it's a consultant that actually go through the data gathering process and then the EIA report. So traditional things like the focus group discussions, stakeholder engagements, physical administration of questionnaire, and then trying to make the beneficiaries of the project understand what the EIA is all about. That is usually done manually. We still did that manually. So where we brought in the digital process massively was areas that we're not able to access before. Traditionally in Nigeria before now, if you are going to take samples or in-situ measurements of air quality, ambient noise, for instance, most times it's on the soil surface in the project area, and then the spatial boundary of where the EIA is going to take place. But for the first time, we were able to put up a drone that went to a distance of about 100 meters to give us in-situ data of what the air quality looked like and what the ambient noise looked like, in addition to the traditional ones we do by taking air quality and ambient noise levels on the ground. So that was what was done initially. Then for the spatial coverage area, yes, the drone we used massively. From the pictures Etienne shared, you could see that. And a big advantage in the use of that is the cumulative impacts. Cumulative impacts over time has been a challenge. So with the use of this drone, we're able to see within 20 minutes the entire spatial coverage of the project, and other projects which were going around in that locality. And then the land use, the various land use types in that area, we're able to see that quickly. Practitioners in Nigeria will agree with me that it takes an average time of about 7 to 14 days, depending on the scale of the project and on the scale of the study and the study area, to gather data on land use, for instance. If you are to move from where this pilot project was situated downstream to the ocean and where you have the mobile producing facility, if you're going to use the traditional process of having to move physically to another place, it's going to take about the whole day. So with the drone, that can be achieved in less than 10 minutes. So that's is an aspect we really gained using the drone. And again, the vegetation study and the biodiversity and wildlife aspects, it's a huge win for the drone. Traditionally, as far back as 1995, 1996, which I am aware of and which I was involved in, when we want to carry out a vegetation study or biodiversity and wildlife, and then soil, surface soil and subsurface soil conditions, what we did traditionally is you mark out a transect from what you have on your paper map. When you get to the site, a transect is marked out, and then we go to those transects, and then you physically using a machete, passing through that transect line, sometimes to a distance of 200 meters, 300 meters, depending on what your spatial coverage area is, in transects that are spread out radially. That takes about 7 days to achieve in the field physically. But with a drone, we were able to establish, first and foremost, the area coverage. Then horizontally going through the forest area, you can lower it down, and then using the high resolution camera, see each of those species you want to see in that location. And a big plus we got from using the drone was that even those biodiversity species we wanted to observe, we sat among ourselves with the regulatory representatives from Akwa Ibom State and then from the federal government and say, how can we achieve this within this vast area? So what we did, which is part of what I will come to in explaining advantages when we begin to use digital process for EIA, we had some probes that could take air quality samples even within the vegetation area. So we attached that to the drones, and it was able to move there and give us all the details we wanted. And something dramatic happened, which I'm explaining because of my colleagues who are practitioners. When that drone went up to, about a distance of 150 meters, in less than 2 minutes, we had representatives from mobile production. They had some aircrafts, gyroscopes, something like which were immediately tailing the drone. And we had to bring back the drone to where we were. And then they sent military personnel and everybody, and they came and they asked us what we were doing. So when we explained, somebody, Rudolph, I think, from Mobi, told us that, oh, now he understands what we're doing. But he wants to let us know further that he has some other equipment and on a bigger drone that you can attach to your drone, and it will even take further samples, even upper level than what we got. So, and he showed us, and he brought those equipment and he showed them to us, and we said, okay, let's try. And then we attached it to the drone. In fact, he even gave us a bigger drone that we could use that as a trial. So that's it's a big win for us, which we felt we have started something new, and then it's going to grow from there. And it's not to mean that because we use drone, all our challenges are solved. No, we have other issues too that using drone are challenges to our traditional system in Nigeria. For instance, we have security issues, and then there are also concerns that because of the digital process of EIA in Nigeria, the traditional system where you have the beneficiaries, the stakeholders, their opinions and their suggestions towards the project might gradually be lost. Again, we're in a process where even the way our EIA is right now, certain times when we want to gather data, we try to speak in a manner and in a language the local persons can understand. We use the broken English, for instance, to speak with them. We have not achieved that totally to get their complete buy-in and understanding of the process. And now we are bringing in something which is entirely new to them, which is a digital system of EIA. So these are areas we're working together to see how we can get the better from the use of both the traditional and the drone. And there are advantages even to our regulators and to the country. I just want to quickly add to my practicing colleagues that a lot of things that we have suffered, I can tell from 1995 to this date. I don't know if Professor Elijah is on this call, Professor Kaka, Professor Kwezo, Dr. Francis Sikuponisi, and Dr. Gile. These are colleagues that we have seen firsthand our colleagues being killed. That is the truth about the EIA process. I have to let us know this, because we were wading through the forest to have transects cut through the line. So those kind of risks and experiences and loss of colleagues which have experienced, I think with this digital process, it's going to be pleasing to every consultant to know. Dr. Dinaha, Professor Dinaha Best, for instance, was shot at point blank, and we thought we were going to lose him. Even when the root cause analysis report came out, till date, as we speak now, those risks are still there. Consultants are still at risk. So with the use of drones, for instance, it's a big advantage for us. We see how we use them perfectly with our traditional system and see how we can benefit. And it has shortened the time for the EIA process. Ordinarily, major development organizations know that if you want to carry out projects in Nigeria, one of the challenges you are going to have is there is time lapse before you can get the in-country permits because of the process the Asia takes. It takes about 9 to 12 months. But with this process, it can be compressed to even 6 months, working together with the Federal Ministry of Environment to provide the regulatory support they can give. And that comes in areas of capacity building, facilities, vehicles, laboratories, so many other things that can be used to support the agency. That way, consultants can also benefit directly, and our Asians can be ready within the shortest available time, and then the whole international community and multi.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. I don't know if it's my connection that's gone or Dr. Andrews' connection that's gone. Hopefully people can still hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Andrews. Unfortunately, we just lost your summing up point. I think the connection froze. But we are now going to move on to need to move on to the Q&A. But thank you very much for that perspective. And I saw a number of people in the questions who were finding that very useful. So thank you for that. So we're now going to move back to a discussion, and me and Etia will answer questions that have come in, and Keisha, I believe, from IAIA is going to host that for us.
Yes, hello, thank you everybody. We have had plenty of good conversation in the chat. Etia's been in there answering some questions and people have been very engaged, so thank you everybody. So I will just pose these questions, and whichever of you want to grab it and answer it, go ahead. So first off, how do you feel the future uptake of digital IA approaches in Nigeria and other nations will occur? Will it be a gradual and steady uptake, or do you think that a rapid change is imminent?
Etia, do you want to go with Nigeria and I'll go wider?
Yeah, okay. Excuse me. I believe, as we've heard, though it's still very obvious, even from this conversation, that there are different pockets of activities happening. And to get to a point where everybody is carried along, there needs to be that conversation where we drag, well, I wouldn't say drag, sorry, apologies. So pretty much all the different stakeholders come together and have a conversation about how it's done. So this sort of conversation we've seen is happening in other sectors. So the financial sector, for example, who would have thought that a few years ago our other citizens in Yaba, Surulere would come up with amazing ideas that has changed the financial sector in Nigeria. We have examples from very recently a Nigerian business in bought over by BlackRock. So it's not for a want of ideas. It's what we're really advocating for is now this is the time to bring the different stakeholders and have a good conversation about how we take things forward. Because the risk is that if we do not do this, see all these big projects that come in. I'm saying it from a professional point of view, and also from as a Nigerian point of view, but also as a a British citizen. So I come from different angles. But for me, I am interested in what happens in my community. So I know, for example, that one of the big companies which starts with G, they're laying subsea cables that's going to land in my village, and this is a conversation we need to have. So we're sort of saying, okay, there's bureaucracy. There's bureaucracy here in the UK. Josh, you do capacity building for Northern Ireland and for colleges in Scotland. So this is a conversation that we're not saying it's in isolation in Nigeria, but the key thing is there needs to be that drawing together. So the likes of the World Bank, if there's anybody from the World Bank, I know you've done something before. There's a blueprint now to take things forward. If there's anybody from African Development Bank, for example, to really get your message. So if you want to see progress and efficiency through the food, the chain of EIA approvals, this is the time to come to the table. Let's have those conversations and overcome. There are ways of unlocking those bottlenecks, in terms of, like Dr. Bass said earlier on, there's problem with regulation. You've seen a clear example. One organization has dedicated resource for the other one. But we have an organization here where we're expecting our amazing scientists, our amazing EIA specialists to also become, technology specialists when it comes to digitization. It's not going to work. So it's a conversation that needs to happen. Bring all the parties together. The academia, they have a role to play. So bringing in the new set of graduates that have this thinking, and even the research reports that they do, it's not hypothetical, but you're actually solving real life problems. And say there's an EIA project somewhere, how can you tie into that? So there are different tentacles which your report, is sort of pointing us to, and we believe it can be done. But I believe we will be quicker if we all come together and do it. But if we still work the way we're doing now, it's going to take forever. That's my response.
And I'd agree, Etia, on the wider kind of international side as well. It is the same, I think, in many countries. It needs that coming together. I think IAIA provides a fantastic basis for that in terms of the conferences, to have some of those conversations between countries as well, so we can share learning. And the previous session to this one within this series was the outcomes of the DREAMS project in Denmark. And that was very much a kind of collaborative, universities, government, developers within Denmark who came together and worked together. And that could be, kind of some learning from that to look at how Nigeria perhaps looks to move its strategy forward. But yeah, it is going to take collaboration to move things forward. I'll leave it there because I see there's quite a few questions.
Well, and actually that's a good lead in to our next question. And this, I think, does cover too a few different questions that people asked, and kind of gets to that as well. So, you mentioned collaboration. What opportunity is there for collaboration, either between countries, practitioners, institution, and others, to help enable digital advances to the benefit of effective IA practice that contributes to delivering sustainable development? So whether that's in Nigeria, in Africa, and globally, what opportunity is there for that collaboration?
I think there's huge opportunities. It's turning that opportunity into reality, I think, is the bigger challenge. So this series and what IAIA has done for kind of enabling the conversation around digital impact assessment, I think has been fantastic. There's lots of discussions. Even in the original report, there are still lots of examples out there of things that we haven't explored in greater depth. And I think the Nigerian report that we're launching today, the next steps section 3 of that, really talks about those opportunities to move forward in terms of a strategy, in terms of people coming together to support that. But I think it is really looking to get a group of people together that clearly must involve the federal ministry and the government, and kind of say, okay, how would we go about this? How do we find the funds for this, and who do we need to bring in? And making the time to make that happen. Etia, I don't know what you think.
I agree. I think I'd also like to maybe put it in a different perspective. So, for example, I've mentioned the tech giants of this world now. So they come to the federal ministry to do an EIA, and then maybe the conversation should be so how can we tap into the tech that you already have to unlock the potentials and make our process much more efficient. So it's not just a case of saying coming to the table to say, okay, this is what the process, we looked at the flow chart, this is how it works. Let's just do it that way, the traditional way. And maybe it's also, this is where we're advocating for practitioners also to come up with ideas. So like Dr. Abbas mentioned, the regulators' point is just to do the regulatory thing. That's what the regulators do. That's so sometimes we know it will take a long time to make these changes happen from legislation, but it doesn't have to be that way. We've just shown from a small project how much change we can drive in the process. So it's about just acknowledging, let's acknowledge for now that yes, there's different things happening in different areas. The UK, for example, we know, for example, the Environment Agency many years ago, they got people together to come up with, they was called a hackathon or something like that. We know some people do mapathon, so which is you get together people with different ideas. Let's just stomp. So that conversation, and again, this is where maybe the Association of Environmental Impact Assessment in Nigeria has a role to play also, to use that platform to build it, because they have access, they have regulators as members, they have academia as members, they have practitioners, and they have students. So it's a whole mix. So it's an opportunity. But if I were to just end by saying, so that example I've just given with the big G going to do, EIA, and they're just doing it the traditional way, that's a missed opportunity. So we should be saying, how can we challenge you? How can you work with us to do it? And I'll finally end by saying the projects that really lose out in this EIA, I want to say, game, is the small SMEs. SMEs that lose out because of it takes so long to get things, the process through, and they don't have the resources that the big ones have. And some people even give up on projects because of how long the process is. So that's another missed opportunity by just people just losing out that, oh, I don't want to do it. The likes of myself, that I know colleagues that are outside the diaspora that want to do something, and they just say, oh, the process is too laborious. So until we can demonstrate and show that there are these different things, and also make noise about it, because some of the work, the amazing work that Dr. Bass is doing in his team, not many people know about it. And it only takes this kind of opportunities to bring those things to fore. And then to say, this is what we have done. Now we have the basis to say, can you support us? Thank you.
Okay, next question here. So this person's first says, compliance to conducting EIA has been facing a lot of reluctance, not only to individual developers, but also government institutions. And according to the expression, the digital approach will increase the cost of EIA and will put some of the stakeholders outside the process, mostly due to the technological gap. So how do we encourage both the individuals and government institutions to adopt the approach and realize that EIA is important in our developing?
Hello, can I take this?
Yep.
Okay. But before then, I was eager to add to what Dr. Itia said about the way forward and this suggestion on the support that tech giants can give us. I will say with certainty that in the times past, we were approached by one of the telecom companies on how they can help us to digitize, to make things faster, both for them and for us. But the leadership then, one thing we also have to appreciate in Nigeria as a country is we are just transiting. People who are at the decision-making level are just about embracing digitization and IT information technology decision making. That set of leaders are being phased out, I mean, those of us who are on our way out too, but were earlier on ready to embrace this thing, we had to face an uphill task in convincing, leaders who are ahead of, superior to us, on how this is very, very important and necessary. I can say that such opportunities were missed then, but in a way, we have introduced some of those things, especially in our telecoms sector. And I can also say that it has reduced the time for our certification process, the digitization that we have embarked on thus far. And the industry is also seeing it, that the time has been reduced. And for SMEs, we have reduced process to take them on board. A good example is companies that are building mini grid, off-grid mini solar projects. We have a very reduction system for them. We have a dedicated platform where they can upload their reports and this thing. And within a two-month period, to give them approval at no cost. So as these things begin to get to spread within society, many of these SMEs will now see that it's a win-win for for them. Then talking about non-compliance, especially by government industry, just like I've said earlier, a number of government offices are still being managed by the old brigades. So people still don't see that lot that you can gain when you throw these things open. But Nigeria as a country, we have a very vibrant social media social media application, and comments from those areas is changing how government is being run. What we now need to do is to get more social media influencers and also through our impact assessment message to the greater public. I think that anytime NGOs in Nigeria want to maybe question maybe any of the big industry players, one of the first thing they ask is, does this project have an environmental impact assessment? So gradually, it's making our work easier, and it's making compliance much more easier for the government, and then it's also bringing in people. So it's not as bad as it used to be. It can be better, but we are on that path to achieving full digitization and compliance in our process. I always tell people, you don't have a hiding place on IT. There is no hiding place. And you can use IT can also expose corruption within a second, because it gives you room for comparison, and you don't know when you throw something out there in the web, you don't know who is accessing it and then who is comparing to. If there are errors or lies or misrepresentation, you don't know who is going to say no, it's not like this, So it's for people have to be ready to open up their mind to embrace this change. That's the message I want to throw out there.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas. That's great.
Yes, thank you. I put it in the chat, but just in case you didn't see that, we will be going a few minutes over. I believe we have time for about one more question. So this person says, first, I congratulate you for this excellent research. Without a doubt, it helps put the issues in perspective. I think one of the key areas of interest would be the available of acceptable and approved digital ENS databases. How best can we make this happen as soon as possible in Nigeria?
I think Eti is probably best to answer the availability, but the report itself highlights the fact that this would be part of a strategy if we were to move forward to investigate that in far more depth. But Eti, over to you.
I think that's the basis for even when we started this research, is that it's not for a lack of not being available. We know for a fact that it is there. And even if it's not there, even with the federal ministry, we know that consultants like, you know, the amazing consultants we have in Nigeria do have this information. And I think this is where it's also important to bring different parties to the table, because we know, for example, on the project I work here. So once you start your project, you voluntarily, you know, provide information, whether it's your monitoring or your biodiversity information. It just feeds in naturally. It just goes to the regulator. So if we look at it from two perspectives, this information is public information. So once it's there, it's there. But it's just that it's in different ones. So this is where the real conversation also needs to happen, which is about making that information readily available so people can go in and have access to it and make decisions. I'll say one thing. One time I had a meeting with a potential investor, and these people would not take me serious until the moment I logged into a website, a government website, and I literally went in and I unlocked and showed them something. This is when they sat up. So it also goes to show that there is importance in having all this information available for people so people can make the information. So for me, you know, as a practitioner, other than relying on what Dr. Boji was going to tell me, I want to know, because this is my locality. If I don't get it right, my people will come after me because they know me. They know where my father's house is. They know my family's house. So it's not a case of hiding, but not being able to, you know, have other information, which I should have, because the site is an operational site. It's kicking, right? So I think this is one of the things we have highlighted, and I think I'll just leave it to Dr. Bass. And Dr. We are fortunate that we even have, you know, the like of Dr. Bass wanting to have conversations about it. So I believe also that the ministries also has activated this sort of system where you can upload your EIA. So it's about where we are today and how far can we do with making the historic information available and useful for information making going forward. Thank you.
Can I just add in here? Although it's just a repeat of what we had said before, we have over 5,000 electronic reports in our database. Yes, at a click of a button, the information may not be too much available to the general public, but we have them in a repository, and we have them in databases that we can handle. It's available on request. There hasn't been any time when people send requests to us that they need information ABC that we don't make available to them. Even when they quote the Freedom of Information law. And we also tell them that the law gives us authority to even deny those information if it has to do with environmental testing. You know, because of the ways that it can be abused. You know, let's talk about Nigeria Delta and all those privileges. But the EIA law anchors on public participation, and we tell them, based on what this IAIA law tells us to do, this is the information that you require. If it's, we may not at times be able to give it to them in print copy, but in digital form, they always have access to it. You know, so each time when this thing gets oft repeated that the information is not, most people who say that have never really even approached the repository of the information that they require these documents. They just assume it is not there. You know, so I know that what we need to do now is to put a public link on our website where people can also access this thing. But again, we are very careful. Yes, some of those information, even though it's a public document, some are still proprietary. And then you also want to be careful where people might want to put their eyes. So you would not want to just leave everything out there. It's people who can approach it directly that they need this thing, are people who really need it and they mean business. You know, so, and I also want to say that we have taken a decision now that we have well over 2,000 reports in hard copies, which we intend to send to the universities around Nigeria for students to use as tools. There's also a way of decluttering our office. you know, because for almost 10 years, nobody has really come to, anytime people come for information, we give them the electronic versions, even though the hard ones are there for them to also look at. So this is one positive thing that we are trying to do, trying to see how we can, you know, disseminate that information, that these reports are out there, they are open, they are available, and it's upon request, you know. So we are not doing enough, but we're trying our best. And then the authenticity of the report, I think it behoves on everybody, so long as the ministry is able to okay a report, at least at that level, it should be accepted as authentic, because there are several layers that we put in before we give the final nod that this final report is acceptable. The law gives minimum content of those services, and then we went over and above what the law, you know, specified to make sure that whatever comes out is acceptable. So the reports that have our seal to a large extent, you know, should be taken as very authentic reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas. Thank you. I think, Dr. Budget, I think we're going to have to probably call it, because we've run 5 minutes over the 5 minutes over. But Keisha, do we have time?
I think we have time for Dr. Andrews for sure.
Can you hear me? Do I have 2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, I think person that sent that text, I have this feeling is an AIA practitioner. So I just wanted to add a little information to that. That other than the digital data we're talking about, that we should have it at our fingertips whenever we need them. The EIA process in Nigeria, it's not just about the data alone that is being generated. There are processes that lead to the acquisition of this data. For instance, you need various experts in various areas of the environment. Then you will need material and equipment. You also need transportation, you need health, you need safety and security of everything. So it's a total package. As a practitioner, I wouldn't want us to lose the focus that it's all about the digital data. There are several things that lead to the acquisition of this digital data that we look forward to seeing. For instance, I want to be very practical about this. I want a situation where, if I come from the this pilot project area, you saw the map I shared earlier on, just next to the Atlantic Ocean, and he says he has spoken with Josh and other interested partners, and they want this project to commence SAP as soon as possible. So I leave that place and I come to Dr. Abbas' ministry and his people. I want a situation where it is possible that, working within the standards and the regulations of the country, Dr. Abbas is able to ask his next available officer that, okay, yourself and Dr. Abuja, you will need to move from this place in Abuja, we're in Abuja right now, to the place near the Atlantic Ocean, where it will not take planning of 2 to 3 months to do that. So there are processes that will enhance that, and I want a situation where everybody, we individual consultants and as a team and as the ministry, as the government, and internationally, any global assistance we can get to support this process, not just about data gathering, facilities, equipment, archiving, human capacity building. When we have all these in totality, then we can have a digital EIA process that is quick, timely, and can respond to the need. So I felt that was very, very important, and I should mention it so that we don't give all our attention to data and downplay the process of getting that data. Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody. So at this point, we are going to wrap up. So thank you to Josh, Etia, and our panelists for the presentation and discussion. So at this point, let's keep talking. If there was anything that you heard today in the webinar that you want to share, you can see our socials and our hashtags there on the screen. If you are a member of IAIA, I invite you to join or to put something on the hub, our online community, about what you heard today as well. And then just a reminder that in a day or two of the webinar, you'll be receiving an email with a link to the recording and to the slides in the webinar. But the slides are available right now in the handouts tab. So if you go there, you can download those. As you leave here today, you'll also be prompted to fill out a feedback survey, just giving us some feedback on how the webinar went today, and we would love if you would fill that out for us. There's also one question on the survey about future topics that you'd like to hear about. So if there's anything that you'd like to hear about in a webinar, please let us know. We will do the work of finding people, finding the experts, and putting them together to get you the information that you would like. So as a final thanks to all the participants who joined today, we know your time is valuable, and we really hope that you found this time valuable as well. So with that, have a great day, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.